Hi, I'm Sophie from Codependent Millennial. Welcome back to How to Live Your Best Codependency-Free Life in Quarantine. Today, we're talking all about how to not overeat and overdrink, even when you're feeling anxious, even when you're feeling bored, even when you're feeling afraid or restless. I'll teach you all about how to not overeat and overdrink in quarantine. So in this video, we're going to cover several things. The one surprising thing you need in order to stop overdrinking and overeating in quarantine, what to do when you're constantly snacking or constantly thinking about food, how to appreciate your desire to overeat and overdrink without giving into it and without resenting it and hating yourself for having it, how to put this problem behind you forever, both while you're in quarantine and when, we're safe to run around again, and how to use this skill in every other area of your life as well, because it will serve you in every area. So let's get started. Now, the first thing I want to cover is the simple, pure act of observation. So while you are, sitting on the couch or sitting at your desk working throughout the day, and you notice cravings, you notice the desire to get up and eat, or you notice at the end of the day a strong desire to just automatically reach for an alcoholic beverage, just observe that. You can observe that urge and observe that desire without immediately acting upon it. Now, so many of us act on it so automatically that we don't even have that split-second pause when we realize it's an urge we're having and a decision to respond to the urge with meeting it. And this fascinates me because if we can just slow it down just half a millisecond in order to have that tiny little pause between the desire and the decision to act upon that desire, that awareness alone and that space, that tiny space, will give us so much more power over the choices we make and so much more control over our habits. What pure observation looks like in practice is, when you're sitting at your computer doing work or whatever, and you feel that urge coming on, you can just literally say to yourself in your head or even out loud, I notice that I'm wanting a cookie right now. I notice that I really want a piece of pizza. I notice this extremely strong urge to go heat up a piece of pizza and eat it. And there's nothing in my brain that is telling me otherwise. It's not an option. It has to happen. That's what it feels like sometimes, right? That's what our brains try and tell us is this is not an option. Oftentimes we feel actual physical discomfort when we don't meet those urges immediately, when we don't succumb to those urges immediately. You can start to, need to play with something with your fingers or tap your foot, or you just start to sweat a little bit. You get anxious with not meeting that urge immediately with what that urge is craving. So I want to ask you if you understand your urges. After this observation period, after you're able to notice that split second between when you have an urge and when you decide to act on that urge or not act on it, do you understand why you're having the urge in the first place? Do you understand why the urge is so strong? Do you understand why getting a bite to eat or something to drink feels like an absolute life or death choice sometimes? And it's life if you do it and it's death if you don't. Do you understand why that stark contrast is so stark? Do you know why you feel anxious sometimes when you think about postponing a meal or not having alcohol at the end of the day? Or perhaps not having a sweet, not having candy, or not snacking throughout the day. When I propose the concept that you not snack throughout the day, does that make you freak out a little bit? It might. And the reason for this is that food is a way for us to avoid our emotions. Food is a way for us to distract from either our emotions or from a task that is causing us some degree of mental discomfort, mental or emotional discomfort. So our brain has really sort of magnified the problem of an emotion and magnified the importance of the solution to that, the avoidance technique, be it food, drink, shopping, anything really, any distraction. And this is a mistake because an emotion can't hurt you. Really, it's not an actual threat. You can process any emotion. You are capable of feeling any emotion without reacting to it by attempting to distract away from it or avoid it. And the food and the shopping and the alcohol and the sugar that your brain wants to use as an escape from that emotion that, by the way, you can't totally handle without any of those substances, all of those substances create such a strong dopamine hit in your brain. I mean, sugar, alcohol, flour, oftentimes we're buffering with sweets like cookies, flour. Your body processes flour the same way it processes a teaspoon of sugar. It goes straight into your bloodstream, immediate dopamine hit. It's like right there. So you've both avoided the sort of painful emotion or frustrating task or whatever, and you've given yourself that reinforcement of the dopamine hit with whatever you were buffering with, or, scrolling or anything like that. It's a dopamine hit. So you have reinforced that pattern in your body, in your brain, to, yes, avoid that thing that we don't want to deal with, and yes, seek pleasure, seek refuge in this thing that ultimately has a net negative effect in your life. So that's the next thing I want to talk about, is the effects that these urges and these met urges have in your life. So once you've observed the urge that you have, and you know what habits and tendencies you've developed over the years, consciously or unconsciously, to meet those urges with, flour, sugar, whatever, alcohol, or shopping, all kinds of different things. Do you then understand the effect that those desires, when they're met, have in your life? I'm sure you can understand now that after you've experienced a certain number of urges to eat pizza or drink beer or drink wine or eat ice cream or whatever, instead of some other behavior, even just, instead of actually feeling the feeling, instead of avoiding it through food and drink, you can see how that's going to compound in your life in several ways. One of them, of course, is, physically, your body is going to deteriorate if you just are constantly eating sugar and drinking alcohol. These things are absolute poison for your body, but also it erodes your relationship with yourself, and it magnifies this fear of the emotions that are challenging or situations that are challenging that created that desire to, buffer and avoid in the first place. So it's this double whammy, this double negative effect, this double net negative effect of I've now just, further reinforced my belief that I can't handle whatever this is, and so I need to avoid it with this false pleasure, and the net negative effect of the false pleasure in my life, which never actually produces a result that you want in the end. You don't really want, if you think about what results from that, you don't really want further disconnection from yourself. You don't really want a weaker capacity to handle your emotions. You don't really want to erode your own trust in yourself. And you don't really want the negative effects of buffering activities. You don't really want those net negative effects of avoid with all of these negative things. But we choose them anyways. Why? Why is that? It's not because we're bad people. It's not because we're lazy or we're stupid. It's because we've developed that habit. So many of the habits that we have developed were unconscious. We didn't know that we were choosing them. But now that you know, now that you're watching this video and you're in this club and you know, you're in the know and you can choose otherwise. So just knowing that up until this point, you were operating out of unconscious, learned behaviors and patterns, that's why you might feel disconnected from yourself, because you never actually actively chose the way you want to process emotion, the way you want to handle, stressors in your life, be it fear, anxiety, stress, sadness, boredom. Boredom is one feeling that people feel a lot and avoid with food, but instead you can feel the boredom and you can decide to do something else with it besides avoid it with food. Amazing, right? So the secret's out of the bag. The one thing you need to learn to do in order to stop overeating and overdrinking in quarantine is to feel your feelings. You recognize the feeling when it comes up. You observe that split second between, oh, I have this urge, and oh, I'm going to meet this urge. You have that split second of awareness, and you can ask yourself, why am I having this urge? What feeling am I trying to avoid with this slice of pizza? What feeling am I trying to avoid with this gorgeous new pair of sandals? What feeling am I trying to avoid with this drink of alcohol? Having that awareness is everything. That is really the number one secret to never overeating, never overdrinking, ever again if you choose not to. And this is difficult for some people. Some people say, well, I would rather keep the overdrinking and overeating. Or they say, I'm just not ready yet. I'm not ready to let go of that behavior yet. And that's okay. Just know where you are and ask yourself why you're there. So if you don't feel ready to examine your emotions and decide to sort of observe the urge before you act on it, if you're just not ready to do that yet, ask yourself why. Is it because you are just so terrified of feeling whatever emotion you're trying to avoid that you really don't believe you can get through it? If so, I would encourage you to just send all the love in the world to yourself and remind yourself day after day. You can, continue to avoid with whatever you want to during this time, but just remind yourself, I can handle this. Whatever emotion I'm feeling that I'm too afraid to even acknowledge, I can handle that. Despite what I've believed in the past, despite what other people have told me, despite any evidence that I may have gathered to the contrary, I know that I can handle any emotion that I'm feeling. And that I don't have to distract away from it, that I don't have to run away from it, that I don't have to avoid it with all of these things that are causing net negative effects in my life. I can do this. This is difficult, but I can do difficult things. I have that confidence in myself. Just remind yourself of that. And then, if you'd like to at some point, open up that awareness, open up that split second between the urge and the meeting of the urge to say, what am I feeling right now? What emotion am I trying to avoid right now? What situation am I trying to avoid right now with food or with alcohol? And is that something that I want to decide to do differently? How might I like to approach this emotion instead of pushing it away with food? How might I like to explore this emotion without just having a drink and forgetting about it, or going shopping and forgetting about it? You can open up those options for yourself and create so much more possibility for new ways of being your own ally in all areas of your life, and not feeling as if you can't handle what life brings you, and feeling like you need to distract or resist away from it with food or alcohol or sugar or anything like that. Okay, so what do you do if you're sitting at home and you are constantly snacking or constantly wanting to snack? Constantly having this desire, or constantly actually just like shoveling food into your mouth. I've been there many, many times. It feels impossible to stop. It feels threatening to stop. And once again, awareness here is everything. Take a breath. Just start with a breath. If you are someone who is absolutely inhaling food without feeling in control of your hands as they're bringing the food to your mouth, start with your breath. The next time this happens, the next time you decide to eat food in this way, breathe throughout the experience and feel your breath, and notice that you're breathing. Notice that you're choosing to do what you're doing. Once you just become aware of your breathing, I know it sounds so simple, but it is everything. When you just become aware of your breath, you will become more conscious in that moment. You are unconsciously eating. We call it fog eating. You are absolutely unconscious in that moment, just reacting, pure reaction. There's no forethought there. There's no prefrontal cortex action. That's all primitive brain. And so if you bring the consciousness of your breath in there, if you bring just a tiny bit of awareness there, you have now put the decision-making power back in your prefrontal cortex's hands, back in your own hands. You are now in the driver's seat again with the keys. And your primitive brain is in the back, maybe like in a cage, right? And you can say, do I want to choose this? And you can even do that with the very next bite. With each new bite, do I want to choose this bite? Maybe the answer is yes for 5 more bites, and then the answer becomes no. But just having that awareness, and maybe the answer is 20 bites, and then it's no. Maybe the answer is so many bites until it hurts, and you can't even remember the stress or the fear or the sadness or the anxiety because your body hurts so much from eating, and then maybe it's a no. But at some point along that journey, you get to a no. And just knowing that you have that power is everything, because you feel as if you don't, but that's not true. You absolutely do, and you can start to employ it in the smallest, simplest way, becoming aware of your breath while you feel like you're eating in an unconscious way. And I'm sure some of you who relate to this feel resentful or angry or hateful towards yourself or towards the desire for overeating and overdrinking. But I promise you, this is something that is fully accessible to you. You can develop a relationship with yourself and a relationship with food that doesn't make it a problematic force in your life. You will come to appreciate this struggle that you're going through right now. You're going to come to appreciate the fact that you unconsciously, habitually try to solve all of your difficult emotions with food or alcohol, because the process of learning to find awareness and self-control around it and to actually not even desire it anymore is the key to everything else in your life. I mean, when you learn to answer the urge to eat or drink with emotional processing instead of food or alcohol, you learn that the desire for food and alcohol was the only way you really knew how to handle that emotion. And so once you learn emotional processing, the desire doesn't even exist anymore. There's no desire for a solution that you know doesn't work anymore. You were mistaken when you thought that solution worked. It worked in the sense that it distracted you for long enough for you to forget how terrible you felt, but it didn't work. You know, you overeating and overdrinking, that doesn't solve your problems. That doesn't make you feel better long term. It exacerbates the problem. It separates yourself from yourself further as time goes on, as you use that as the buffer. So really understanding that once you see how hollow that solution really is and how completely ineffective it was at giving you the happiness you were seeking, it won't have as much of a draw on you anymore, physically or emotionally. You know, the physical desire for alcohol or for sugar will fade as you remove those things from your daily diet. And I use the word diet just in things you're eating, not like a diet, because obviously diets don't work. And we can talk about that later if you're interested. But I just want to remind you that the desire for the overeating, the desire for the overdrinking will diminish when you remind yourself that, yes, I have the capacity to process and feel these emotions that I'm avoiding, and this is truly the solution to my quote-unquote problem, not the food that I've been trying to use as the solution in the past. So now I want to talk about how to use this skill in many, many other areas of your life. Now, you can substitute, food and alcohol and shopping and whatever for any other avoidance activity. I know we all have plenty of them. We all have lots of different ways in which we like to avoid dealing with our lives. So in whatever area you find yourself wanting to escape, it's likely that you have an avoidance behavior that isn't producing positive results for you in your life. Now, think for a minute, what could that be? Ask yourself if there is an area of your life in which you often feel like you want to escape. Is there an area of your life where you are often uncomfortable, so much so that you try and avoid it? And if so, what is the method that you use to try and avoid it? What is that? Once you've answered that question, you can really look to see what the long-term effects are or will be from that avoidance activity. And from there, you can choose whether or not you'd like to continue it. And like I said, some people choose to continue their destructive behaviors. That is up to them. we're all adults. We can choose the way in which we'd like to live our lives. Some people do choose long-term destructive activities over developing the skills of emotional processing. The reason why is because they are so afraid of feeling the emotions that they've been avoiding, that the desire to create a life they love long-term is not enough, and they don't believe in the possibility of that enough to go through the initial discomfort of releasing the avoidance behaviors. And I just want to tell you, if you're watching this video, I promise you, you have what it takes to develop the skills to process any emotion you're going through, to handle any situation in life you're going through without long-term negative effects of avoidance behaviors that you might be taking, be it, alcohol, food, sugar, drugs, anything, literally anything. So once you recognize that you are able to process any emotion and handle any situation, it doesn't matter what you want to create in your life and how difficult it might be, how long the road might be, because you're up for it. It doesn't matter. If there's something you want to create in your life, and it's this big, amazing, beautiful dream, there are going to be points of discomfort, and there are going to be challenges along the way to getting it. You're going to have to become a different person, and that inherently is an uncomfortable process. That's the whole point. It's not, if it's not uncomfortable on the road there, is it really a big enough goal? Is it really a shiny, beautiful enough dream? Is it really your fullest expression of living? So on that way to your dreams, you're going to have to employ this tool of emotional processing so that you don't get bogged down in the distraction activities, in the avoidance activities. I want you to really practice this in the coming week, even just once a day, getting that awareness around the urges you're having, the avoidance techniques you're using to avoid whatever feeling you're trying to, escape, breathing into that, choosing differently in the moment, even just understanding that you have that choice, and choosing, processing the emotions, hearing what they have to tell you, learning from them, asking yourself the questions that they're asking, instead of escaping into that tub of ice cream or that box of brownies. It is possible for you, and I promise you, you will see incredible effects in your life, physically, mentally, emotionally, in your relationship with yourself, in your relationship with others, in your relationship to your goals and your dreams, all of it. It is so worth it. And yes, it's uncomfortable, but that is exactly the point, and you can handle it. I promise. I want to thank you so much for joining me today. You can find more information about me and sign up to receive the full 7-day guide on living your best codependency-free life in quarantine at my website, codependentmillennial.com. If you yourself are struggling with overeating, with overdrinking, with avoiding through shopping, through any other compulsive behavior, come talk to me. Schedule a free session. Go to codependentmillennial.com/work with me, and we can talk there. I'd love to offer you some personalized, individualized support around this topic. It's one that I struggled with for so long, and that really held me back for a long time. So if you're working through it yourself and you'd like some free one-on-one support, I'm here for you. Again, that's codependentmillennial.com/work with me to schedule a free session there. And I will see you tomorrow for our next lesson. Have a wonderful day. Bye.